Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. No Lazio playing today, unfortunately. There have been the Italian national team playing. Maybe we're going to talk about that, even though, again, not good news for Ciro Immobile. Well, it depends how you see it. But plenty of things to talk about, Mr. Alistair Mackenzie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. International breaks are never particularly happy times for me, being from Scotland. But it's quite a nice chance to relax a bit, especially when there's the European games in midweek and everything else. It's been pretty full on, pretty hectic for the last few weeks before this, so it's been quite a relaxing weekend, I suppose.
Yes, and I didn't see the calendar, but I think it's the last break till December, so it's the last chance for Lazio to relax a little bit before the final rush of the season. Very important match coming, very important Europe League match as well coming. So it's probably the best time. Rupert spoke, I think, Wednesday about how important this break is to make the other players catch up and push for the last week of full training and physical conditioning before the match comes back, because when you're playing on twice a week with the Europe League, it's really difficult to train, to do a really intense training, and then you have pretty much only this week to do it.
Yeah, and also to supposed to focus on any specific things that need particular attention. It's not easy if you've got. I mean, the Fiorentina game's a good example because Inzaghi was complaining before then that they'd have to come back from Frankfurt on the Friday, and then they only had Saturday morning to train, and then that was it. So they don't get nearly as much preparation time. One thing I will pick you up, and there is one more break before December. It's the weekend, the 17th of November. There's one more international break then. So, but between now and then, it is pretty much a game every 3 days. So again, we're entering another incredibly important run of fixtures.
Yep, yeah, it's a week that could be really important for Lazio, and it was because we saw finally back Mr. Lukaku. He trained again, finally back with the team. Now I don't know how things will move forward, but it's good to see him back.
Yes, I think any players returning from injury is always bonus. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. I mean, we've only really been able to speculate as to what his involvement's going to be this season, because obviously there were quite strong links about the possibility of him leaving the club over the summer, and his injury's been pretty long term as well. So it's been a while since we've seen anything from him. But it looks like he's going to be taking the place of Dusan Basta in the squad in Serie A. So Basta does look very much on the way out, but we more or less knew that already. I don't think Frankfurt helped his cause, though.
No.
So yeah, it'll be interesting, I think, to see what happens. But it's coming at a good time, because with Dermisi as well having his own problem, which thankfully isn't too bad, but with him having his own injury as well, it's a good time to bring him back in.
Yes, one thing I want to bring and discuss today is there are too many secrets in this team, I feel. Lukaku, we know he had an injury to his knee, but no details have been revealed. And it's funny because if you consider he was in the Belgium list to the World Cup, then he has been dropped at the last minute. So I don't understand how a player can be fit to play the World Cup and then not fit to start the season and start it 3 months afterwards or the others. And we said this week he started training with the team. We don't know still when he's going to be able to start a match and to really do the full training with the rest of the squad. I mean, Alistair, what is it? Why you don't reveal what had Lukaku? Ligament injury, muscle problem, whatever it is. I don't understand why keep these secrets.
I don't think it was necessarily a secret. I think the club tend to be a bit vague in their description of injuries anyway, perhaps just to cover their own backs, so that if they give any sort of prognosis of a recovery time and it ends up being wrong, then it makes them look a bit stupid. But I do remember with Lukaku, he himself published a video on his social media channels. I think it was last month or maybe 2 months ago, and basically with the team he was working with in Belgium. I think I'm right in saying it was the same guys who worked with Stefan de Vrij while he was recovering from his knee operation. But he posted a video where there was one of his doctors explaining the extent and the nature of his injury and the recovery process and what he was having to go through. So that was quite interesting because, like you say, we weren't really getting an awful lot of insight into what was happening.
Okay, we drop Alistair. Let's try to catch him again. Alistair, you're back?
Hello, I'm back. Yes. Sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Don't know. You were talking about Lukaku anyway.
Where did you lose me?
When after the video of saying like the video he shot on Instagram, like the Vrij he was managing, he was training.
Yeah. Well, that was it, really. I mean, basically, yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, to consider whether that was something that he wanted to do to clear up things himself with his own supporters and fans, or if that was, and as a result, if that would have been something that would have gone through the club or not. I don't know, but I think it definitely helped.
Yeah, and the other thing about the secrets, well, we talked about the example of Patrick, right? That he didn't show up at Oronzo, then Lazio published the list of players called, and he was there, and no mention why he wasn't there, and then suddenly after a couple of days he was back there, and it was all due to a fever. Why don't say it immediately? Why create all those issues? Patrick is not part of the group, etc., etc. And this leads me to the situation of Luis Alberto, because no one mentioned about injury of Luis Alberto, but a little bit like Lukaku did. If you notice, all last week he published video of him with a trainer, and he didn't train with the team last week. So he's recovering from something, an injury, but there's no official statement. So, we complain about Luis Alberto playing poorly, being not the same player of last year, but maybe there's something. Maybe he's injured. And again, why nobody said nothing about it? And Iglitare spoke last week, and he said Luis Alberto is only a problem. He never mentioned an injury. So I don't understand.
Yeah, Alberto's a good example because it would have been, clarification on that and a bit of transparency would have helped both parties. It would have helped the player and the club. And he's still struggling from whatever the problem is, because there was the first team had a friendly match against the Primavera just yesterday, and he wasn't taking part in it. He was watching the game in the stands. And apparently this week, over the international break, has still been training with a Spanish specialist to help him recover from this problem. So I don't know. I think the answer to that may just be the same one that's the answer to most of these things, which is that Lazio have, for one reason or another, developed a kind of siege mentality with the media and the press, where they generally aren't, they don't have a very good relationship and aren't very trusting of the media. So as a result, they're less likely to open up. But I think in this case, where you can handle it in your own way and put things out through your own channels, it seems like a no-brainer, really.
Especially because a player get destroyed by the fans. Fans start complaining about Luis Alberto performance. But if Inzaghi, after the match, would have said, look, Luis Alberto is injured, but he's still playing because he wants to give everything to the team, I guess fans would be having a different reaction. We know that Luis Alberto didn't finished injured the season, but if you see and it was muscle problem on the leg. But if you see the video, his lower back, his tummy, he's doing something there. So I don't think it's related to the injury he had last year. So I don't know where he got it.
Yeah, it's a mystery. I don't know. I don't know if you've follow Luis Alberto on Instagram. Maybe he will do the same as Lukaku and explain things himself. Who knows?
Yeah, he probably showed this video. Otherwise, I think nobody will know because, as you said, he didn't train all week with the squad. And again, no mention, no official statement from Lazio. So you can think that, there's something wrong there. That maybe he's upset because he didn't play, etc. And he was publishing all these videos of he in Rome because he published even a couple of pictures of him around Rome doing this massage to try to recover from this injury. So again, this is something, especially because as we're gonna talk later, Tari spoke this week and said a lot of things interesting, even about Luis Alberto, but never ever mentioned nothing about his injury. So, quite surprising.
Yeah, and also the comments that Tari did make about him, he said that with Alberto it's a mental thing, and the fact that he has to feel untouchable to be at his best. But at a team as ambitious as Lazio, you can't play badly for a few games in a row and expect to still be in the team. And if there is an injury problem with Alberto, it seems a bit strange for Tari to go publicly down the line of it being a mental issue for him and a confidence issue, which, to be fair, is the kind of line that we've been treading as well. And the same thing we've been saying this season so far is that it does appear to be a confidence issue more than anything else. But yeah, perhaps it's worth bearing in mind, regarding the criticism that's been directed at him.
Yeah. Anyway, this is something Lazio have to improve because it's just damaging himself, the team, and not creating the right atmosphere for the fans. So, and again, in the social media era, it's so easy to be, to discover all these things because players keep publishing pictures every day. So you found out things. So it's not. I mean, I can understand if the players say, it's I've got an injury, privacy, I don't want anybody to tell. But if I publish a video on Instagram, then obviously that's not a problem. So
yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Tari a little bit. He spoke a lot last week. He spoke about Milinkovic Savic. He spoke about Luis Alberto. Talking about Luis Alberto, I'm not convinced he needs to feel untouchable. I think he's the type of player who needs to feel that his manager trusts him a lot. And this is probably why the first year he didn't play that well. Even because, obviously, Lazio was playing with a three-man attack, and he's not a winger. He's a central player who have to play in a central position, and he showed it last year. But I think maybe he didn't feel the trust of Simone Inzaghi. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I find that a difficult excuse to accept for this season because Inzaghi, I think, did show him a lot of trust this season already, and the fact that he stuck with him paid off. I mean, Alberto's first goal of the season, he rushed over straight to the bench in celebration, which took to be a signal of his, gratefulness for that faith that's been placed in him. And I think especially given that Correa's come into the team and is looking for game time, and now on top of that, he's got the new Felipe Caicedo to contend with as well. So I think the amount of games he's started and opportunities he's had this season has shown that Inzaghi's got a lot of faith in him, and said before that I think Inzaghi really wants this to work more than anyone, because he's the one who essentially discovered Alberto as a player in Serie A and took him, like you said, from basically obscurity to being one of the best midfielders in the league. So I don't think he should feel like there's any lack of faith around him. I do feel like he probably also needs to feel trusted by his teammates, and that might be a bit of a different question at this point if they're seeing the way he's performing and not quite having the same faith in him. But he's not the only player this season that can be said of, is the only thing. Milinkovic-Savic being the obvious other option, who's the other one Terry was talking about.
Yeah, about Milinkovic-Savic, he said that the reason why he's not performing that well is mainly is the fact that he started training very late after the World Cup, and obviously all these rumors of big transfer, big money around him affected him. Probably.
But he said he's big. I mean, that's essentially his argument, was that because he's bigger than everyone else, it takes him longer to reach full fitness.
Yep, that's true. Usually, bigger players takes more time to get in condition, because you're a bigger body, and compared to a slim guy, you're heavy, and it's tough to get in shape, to get rolling, as the American was saying. So it makes sense for a Milinkovic-Savic player. I'm not sure the money around him affecting him so much, though.
Yeah, and well, the way it was written anyway, it seemed like that was almost an afterthought for Tare. You know, he kind of came prepared with this argument with Milinkovic-Savic, saying that it was this fitness issue because of the size of him. He's a heavier player and so on, which is interesting. I mean, I do understand, the idea behind that argument, but 2 months later, really? I mean, for me, it's not really. It shouldn't be an excuse at this point of the season. You know, you're at the second international break of the season. You can't be complaining about not being fit yet. If you're a professional footballer, no matter what size you are.
Well, it looks like he played well last week. He had a good performance with his national team, so let's hope he carries on with Lazio. No?
Yeah, we'll see. I've just seen, by the way, there's a few people who've been asking us about the Italy game tonight and Ciro Immobile being overlooked, and I've just seen that Mancini's said that the reason he preferred Kevin Lasagna tonight is because he's better with his head. And they needed a few more centimetres to avoid conceding goals from set pieces as well, which is an interesting...
Yeah, we can close it here, I think. Right. Bye, guys. The podcast is finished. I mean, come on. Yep.
Yeah.
It's I have to be honest. In one way, I'm happy. He didn't get injured. He's not tired for sure. Maybe he's even upset. So next Sunday he's gonna play even harder to show Mancini that, hey, I'm the best striker in Italy at the moment. So
what did you make of his social media post with the shushing?
Yeah, I think players take pride in what they do and see the result he had. And it's funny, there's still people believing that he's not a good striker, that he scores many goals because, I don't know, the other Serie A teams are not good. But then it's funny because Serie A teams are not good, and that's why Ciro Immobile scores a lot. And then immediately Serie A team are very good, that's why Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't score very much. Can be both, must be one of the two. So all the Serie A team are bad, and then Cristiano Ronaldo maybe it's not that great, or Serie A team are good, and then Ciro Immobile is a very good striker. Can be both.
And also, Poland basically are a Serie A team.
Yeah, that's right.
So you might as well put him in.
Yeah, no, come on.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, but I mean, we've kind of talked about this before, but the whole Immobile national team relationship is a very strange thing.
Yep.
It's hard to defend a lot of his performances with Italy. I should say that he doesn't play as well for Italy as he does for Lazio. I don't think there's any debate about that. But the point is more that the criticism he gets is unfair, really, in comparison to the efforts he makes.
Yeah, to close this argument, you have to say that we are not talking about a player who can carry on his shoulder the team. He need to have someone who delivers him the ball, and he scores. And to be honest, last year Italy was awful, and it wasn't Ciro Immobile's fault. He simply didn't have anybody decent that could pass him the ball, and you can see it. You saw in the derby he was so good. He didn't need an assist to score. He just stole the ball from Roma defender. So again, there are a lot of players who perform really well in clubs and don't replicate that success in the national team. Roberto Mancini was one of them, probably the most popular. I would say even Gianluca Vialli at that time. Plenty of example we have of players that are great with the club and not as great with the national team. So I'm happy to keep Ciro Immobile like this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it suits me fine. It probably suits most of our listeners fine as well, to be honest.
Absolutely. We have a very important question from Remy Algendi. How is your toe?
Oh, well, I mean, while we're talking about all the injury concerns here in Rome, this is a hot topic.
Absolutely.
It's okay. It's okay. I made a pretty bad decision, which was somebody stood on me while they were wearing football boots while I was playing during the week. And then the next night I went and played football again when I could hardly walk, which was a pretty poor choice in retrospect, but it allowed me to not watch Scotland that night, which turned out to be a very, very good decision.
But that's an easy decision.
Yeah, well, it's becoming easier every week. So yeah, but no, thank you very much for your concern, Rami. I'm getting there. We'll be fighting fit again. I'll be fighting for my place.
Alistair, we talked about a lot of players, but Stefan Scarpulla asked us, will Cataldi and Murgia ever feature for this team this season? That's a valid point. I was surprised, honestly, to see Cataldi playing against Napoli. He entered, he didn't start, obviously. But after that, I don't think he played any minutes. Murgia started, but with all those options in the midfield, they are probably the two players who are more sacrificed at this moment. I still hope to see them play, but it looks difficult, especially now that Berisha's back.
Yeah, and that's going to take a hit in their development as well, because it's quite hard to say. I think for players like Murgia and Cataldi, they're no longer kind of teenagers or hot prospects who are coming through the ranks. They're now at a stage of life in their early 20s where they need to really be playing regular football to kick on to the next level. And at the moment, it's really hard to see how that's going to happen at Lazio, like you say, because even in the Europa League games and the kind of second string games, neither of them are going to be playing every single time. Murgia is obviously more in favour than Cataldi is, but I don't think that's really enough for Murgia. And on top of that, there's various things that Inzaghi wants to do that he keeps tinkering with, rightly or wrongly, such as, pushing two players further up or having Badel alongside Lucas. And there's various kind of midfield experiments that are there to be made where those matches are kind of the opportunity to do that more. And as a result, that hits on Cataldi and Murgia's opportunities even further. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good for them at the moment. It's going to take something pretty special from one of them in the chances they get to really force themselves into contention, I think.
Two things. One, you were saying something special, but for example, Murgia scored a very important goal last season, and to be honest, that didn't impact how often he played. I didn't think he played that much last season, even after that incredible goal. And then he scored in I think it was probably the first Europe League match of that season. And still, we didn't see him playing a lot. And the other one is how funny football is. If you remember the first year Cataldi played for Lazio, at the end of this year in summer, there were a lot of newspaper talking about Cataldi to be called from the national team, Italian national team. And you simply don't understand how it's possible that a player like that doesn't have any more time to play in a club like Lazio.
Well, it's just a case of the options. I mean, I know what you mean. I'm assuming you're referring to the Super Cup goal, the first one. But at the same time, maybe nobody really expected quite how well Milinkovic-Savic should be playing. And it was very hard to drop him last season. Lucas couldn't be dropped. And even if he could, Morja's not naturally disposed to playing in that role. And that really only leaves Marco Parolo, who's basically indestructible. I mean, the guy just never stops. So now we're at a stage where I think looking at that midfield, Inzaghi has to make a choice as who's going to be his long-term successor to Marco Parolo, because he's not going to go on forever. He's still fantastic even at this age, but he won't go on forever. So I think he has to have an eye on that, what he wants to do about that. And if the answer to that is either Murgia or Cataldi, then he needs to start integrating them into this team more. I mean, the problem now for those two guys as well is that now we've got Valan Berisha in the squad. I mean, I should say this isn't a problem for us as fans. This is fantastic because we've got great depth and options in there, but it's going to make it even harder for them to try and force their way into the team now that we've got a player of Berisha's caliber coming in.
Yes. I was thinking this week, did Inzaghi change a little bit his mindset? Because if you remember the first year, he wasn't scared of giving chance to youngsters. We saw a lot of youngsters playing Murgia, Ramos, and so on. This year is something different because we didn't see Cataldi, Murgia playing, but as well we didn't see Pedro Neto, Bruno Giordao, etc., etc. Lazio has a bunch of youngsters, very promising, that are bouncing from Primavera to first squad. I was expecting, especially knowing Inzaghi, to see them playing. There have been rumors about the two young Portuguese this week, and again, I saw them playing this summer. It's true that summer friendlies are not fundamental, but it helps you seeing the player, and you could see that those two guys were really talented. So why they don't get a minute of play, I don't know. It's something I really don't understand. And you can add Rossi to the mix as well.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to throw in. I do think you've got a point there in that he's perhaps a bit more risk averse than he used to be. Maybe, I mean, you do also have to take a step back and look at this team and think that he's the one who made Strakosha the number one and has helped Strakosha develop into the keeper he is now. He's the one who basically found Luis Felipe out of nowhere and put him into this team, and now he's one of our best options in that defence. You know, he's not been afraid in the past to do this. And the Luis Felipe one, that was last season as well, so we're not talking about very long ago. So I think it's too soon to say that he's giving up on the idea of throwing young players in. But the Portuguese guys seem to be their own case. I don't know what it is about them, but it's probably just because there's this kind of clamour of people to see them given the money that was spent on them, which after this last week we now know to be about 12 million euros, I think it was.
Yep.
Which is a lot. You know, that's more than we paid for Milinkovic-Savic. So we do expect to get something for that money, but I think it's also about the circumstances. Inzaghi's a really intense competitor. He wants to win every game, and the fact is that the squad depth in the past perhaps hasn't been big enough that we can be in a comfortable position in these what we'd class as lower importance games like Europa League group stage games, for example. And so that would be a good opportunity and a good time to throw players in, is maybe when you're 2 goals up or something against a team in the Europa League group stages or the Coppa Italia, something like that. But we very rarely found ourselves in those kind of situations. And given the Europa League group we've got this year, I don't see that changing. And then to throw these guys into a Serie A game, given how important every single one of those is and the depth of this squad, I just can't see it happening. I mean, unless it's desperation mode and you really need a goal and you don't know what to do and throw on Neto. But I would always see him reaching for Correa or Caicedo before going there, so...
Yeah, I understand you, but let's not forget that last season we started with Palombi. And if Neto or Jordao are really that good, well, they can be young, but if they're really that good, then give them a chance. And even you send a message to the rest of the squad, I'm not looking at your age. If you're good, you're playing, and those guys are good, and they deserve to play. Otherwise, I saw them. I know they're not that bad. Probably there's something else if they don't play. Maybe they are not mentally ready. But then why do you spend 11 million on 2 players that are skilled but mentally not ready for professional football? And it's not Economidis that is someone you had in your Primavera and didn't cost you nothing.
Yeah, and they're not that young as well.
No.
As in being 19, 20, I think they are. I think Neto's 19, Judao's 20.
I think he became Neto this week, for who is listening live, has turned 20. So...
right. Okay, exactly. So it's if you're in your 20s, you're fair game to be playing. I mean, you turn on the TV tonight and you see Gigi Donnarumma in goals for Italy. That guy's already got almost 100 appearances for Milan under his belt, and he's still 19. I mean, it's not. I don't think that's an age where it's an excuse to not be playing if you're good enough.
Well, that's an exception. For the problem is, and you're Scottish, so you're a little bit different. In Italy, if you're 22, you're still youngster. In Premier League, if you're 22 and you're good, you already had 2 seasons as a starter, And this is something that I was happy to see Inzaghi, because he changed a little bit that. You saw Strakosha, Ramos, etc. So I'm wondering if these 2 guys are really good, and I saw them, they have talent. It's not that they're 16 years old that you say, it's still young. They are not Messi. But at 20, if they don't get 10 minutes time in Serie A, that's really concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I see that we've already had a response to this part from Rami, who's suggesting the best solution for them being a loan move in January. What would you think about that?
To be honest with you, I don't like the loan move, because players go on loan and hardly play. And it's not that they don't play because they are not good, because you take the example of Strakosha. You saw how good he is, and it's not possible that from one year he's a bench in Salernitana and he's a starting goalkeeper for Lazio the year afterwards. And you see it a lot of times. Other players happen the same. So they pretty much lose a year going on loan. If they're good, they have to start. It's difficult. If you see Palombi is doing well this season, but as well when he went on loan to Salernitana, he hardly played. So,
and our track record isn't good with loans as well. If you think about how many players we've had out on loan last season, for example, there were a lot of players on loans from Lazio last season, and how many of them were a success? It's quite hard to think of any, really.
Yeah, probably Minala had the best season last year for Lazio players on loan.
So I do think it can work. If it does seem like an obvious thing. If there's no space for them here, get them to a club that will give them space. But the point you're making is a good one, which is that you'll never get the guarantee that that's going to happen. And I think a really good loan move where you play a lot of football, you do very well, can be exactly what a young player needs to kind of kick on. But um, yeah, I wouldn't be filled with confidence that that's what would happen with these two.
Yeah, and another example is if you think the player that had bigger success coming from Lazio Primavera are Keita, Onadzi, Murgia. All of them didn't go on loan, neither for 6 months. They just started with Lazio. You can add Strakosha, who went 1 year to Salernitana, but you can see that if you're good, you stay with Lazio, stick with Lazio, and you will have the chance. I hope this is not changing, because one of the things you have to say with Tare that he's very good in picking this young talent like Ramos, Strakosha, etc. But then they need to play in the first squad. Otherwise, they're not useless, but they don't provide what you're looking for. Starting player for your first squad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the conveyor belt, in my mind anyway, seems to be slowing down. You know, in terms of the number of first team players that are going to be produced by the Primavera team, given that they've dropped down to Serie B or whatever it's called.
Yeah, to be honest, this summer Tare bought a lot of players for the Primavera. So we're gonna see if
they're just, you know, there always seems to be every year or second year there's like one player in the Primavera team that everyone gets very excited about, and you're talking about them a lot and trying to track their progress. But I just don't think we really have that player anymore. Well, this season, as far as I know, I mean, there's no one who really seems to be getting everyone excited to keep an eye on, which is probably another reason that so much attention is being paid to Jordao and Neto, because there's no one in the Primavera to distract the attention. So if you're thinking about youth players, you're pretty much thinking about them.
Yeah, who are not anymore youth players, but
yeah, exactly. One of the other things I think, mentioning the Primavera, that I wanted to get onto because we've had a few questions about it, was so there was a friendly match yesterday between the first team and the Primavera team, and it finished 3-0, but to the first team, thankfully. But yeah, Inzaghi started with his normal formation, 3-5-1-1, but then during the game, I think it was in the second half, switched to 4 at the back and went 4-4-2. And, you know, the back four is something we've talked about quite a lot.
Really?
We've had it again. I mean, Rami's asking us if there's any chance of it happening in games. He said, I don't think so personally. Arvid as well has been in touch to say, is this an overcritical fixation that it would solve everything, or is it a tactical necessity? And just to pick up on that last point, of tactical necessity, I thought it was quite interesting to hear Patrick got interviewed by Lazio Style, and he was asked about it and said that it's going to be used this season. But then he kind of went on to say it's every time that we go down to 10 men, it's going to be what we use. Basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but essentially that it was the plan B. If Lazio have a man sent off, they'll always use a back four, which is what's already happened this season, as we've seen. So by the sounds of things, it's kind of a shape that's being used as a last resort rather than a shape that's Inzaghi's planning on using going forward.
I think it's not going to be the starting option, but probably we're going to see more often during the match Lazio shifting to maybe a four-man defense. And this is not going to be only because Lazio get a player sent off, but because in some circumstances they can opt for a different formation. As I think everybody are aware, I don't think Inzaghi gonna switch from a three-man defense to a four-man defense, but maybe it's gonna be more used during the matches. And as we said even last year, we all thought that Lazio had the players that allows Simone Inzaghi to switch formation during the match without making substitution. Casares can play left back. Ramos, we saw him playing there, even right back. Radu, etc., etc. So plenty of Lazio defenders can change position. So I think this is an option Inzaghi wants to keep open. I would be more interested of seeing something different in front. Instead of playing with a 5 midfielder, it would be interesting to see something a little bit different. Maybe Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto playing just behind Ciro Immobile in a hypothetical 3-4-1-2. That would be, something interesting that could make Lazio more dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing. It's a very flexible squad, a very versatile squad that can be molded into a lot of different shapes, and maybe that's the reason Inzaghi wants to stick to his shape anyway. Is that once he starts tinkering, he might never stop because the options are unlimited basically with what he can do with this group of players. You see it. You only need to look across the city at Roma to see the benefits of having a fixed tactical identity. And there was something in the I can't remember if it was the Gazzetta or Corriere dello Sport recently, but one of them was going through the top 6 teams in Italy and basically highlighting the fact that Lazio and Milan were the only 2 teams in the league from the top 6 who have a tactical identity that they're sticking by, and as a result we're kind of benefiting from it. And it's only relatively recently that Roma have switched to the 4-2-3-1 system, and since then have gone on a good run that included Derby, obviously, and have a bit of momentum because of that. So I wouldn't. I know the temptation when things are going wrong is to say that we need to pull it all apart and build it up again in a different way, but I don't think that's necessarily the answer. I do think what you're suggesting is a better idea, which is, maybe more subtle tweaks to what's already there rather than starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah, I think it would be better for Lazio to change something in front more than in the defense. But it's good to have all these options for Lazio. Even switching from a 3 to a 4-man defense, I don't think it's gonna make a much difference. Most of the time there are mental error, there are single players' mistakes. Against Fiorentina, it's not that Wallace doesn't make that mistakes if we play with 4 defenders instead of 3. So, but again, as I said, Lazio have plenty of option there.
Yeah, I think, and exactly, you're right. The individual errors part is a big part of it, and a lot of the time you can understand. You really can understand Inzaghi's frustration with some performances and some results, because things like that are nothing to do with him, really. He, apart from the fact that he's aware that Wallace has an error like that in him, there's not an awful lot he can do to actually predict the outcome of games based on events like that. So if he sets the team up in a defensively sound structure, which I think he's done pretty well this season. One thing that we all wanted to see was an improvement defensively this season, and I think on the whole we've got that. The Frankfurt game was a complete disaster, but that was also obviously down to the fact that we were 10 and then 9 men down. So other than that, I do think that generally, although things have been a bit close for comfort sometimes, the defence has been better, and the structure of the defence has been better this season than it was last so far.
Yep. Alistair, one thing I wanted to talk about today before we finish the podcast is, as usual, all the balance of the football team came out this week, and of Serie A teams. Well, even of all the teams around the world normally, but I would focus on the Serie A one, and all the big clubs have, on a balanced way, a very bad season. They all lost money, except one, Lazio. That is the only one who had a positive year. It's a little bit surprising because if you think, Roma reaching the semi-final in the Champions League, that's a lot of money. Sold two key players like Nangolan and Alisson, and still was able to lose money. It's surprising, and there's not surprised Milan, honestly. Inter, you were expecting. Juventus a little bit, seeing how many, you hear a lot of president talking about Juventus revenue, and then you find that even they are struggling this season. What's your thought about that?
Well, I can basically feel Claudio Lotito smiling from here. He's miles away, but I'm sure I can feel his happiness. It is basically a result of him being so financially frugal, and that should be something that people always bear in mind when they form their opinions about Claudio Lotito. It's very easy to jump on the bandwagon of criticizing the guy, but one thing he is very good at is financially sorting the club out. And if you compare the club to where it is now from when he picked it up, there's a huge difference. But also, as you're flagging up here, there's now a big difference between where Lazio are financially and where the other clubs are. I suppose the one thing is you want to see that go somewhere. It's one thing being a club in good financial shape, but then also it's reality that most of the leading football clubs in the world are in massive debt, because that's just kind of how they operate. So I hope it doesn't put the club off spending and investing in worthwhile things in the future. But it's nice to get reassurances that side of things is healthy, at least.
Well, you have to remember that there's still the financial fair play, so clubs are not allowed to be in economical crisis like, AC Milan. It's in a complicated situation. Rome as well, as you could read the balance of Rome this season. So, now UEFA wants that clubs are healthy, and Lazio is healthy, and that's one of the reasons why people were believing that Lazio had to sell Milinkovic-Savic. No, Lazio's fine. They can keep Milinkovic-Savic without losing money. While you see on other clubs are forced to sell players like Nangolan and Alisson. But on the other side, you see that why Lazio is doing this. It's not because Claudio Lotito is a magician. You see that the salaries of Lazio players are the lowest of the big clubs. We saw this September that Ciro Immobile was getting, before the renewal of contract, less than Diego Perotti. And I mean, it's difficult to argue that the Argentinian is better than Ciro Immobile. But the fact that the total amount of money that Lazio spent for the salary is 66 million euros, while AC Milan is 140 million euros. That doesn't mean that Milan is a better club, but obviously, if you can offer a bigger salary, then it's more likely that a bigger player will choose your team. And you have the example of De Vrij that went to Inter, getting the triple salary, 3 times bigger than the one he had at Lazio. Same thing Biglia, So there is a reason why. Obviously, Lotito is very careful and never try to exceed the limits, while the other club like Milan is doing it, and that there's a risk. So it's good from one side, but there's a reason why this happened, and that could create problem on the pitch.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that already though that you can see that the fact that the club is financially in a healthy position is helping improve the situation with salaries, for example. I mean, the double extension recently for Milinkovic, Savic, and Immobile has seen them become the first players of Latito's era to break the 3 million a year mark. The first players ever to do that. So, obviously there's a big gap salary wise between Lazio and the teams at the top, but that is at least growing, or at least it appears to be growing to reward those players. And yeah, you said that Lazio don't need to sell. They don't, but that's probably the issue, is that if a Man United or Real Madrid comes in and offers them 5 times the salary they're getting at Lazio will never match that. But at least they're putting themselves in a position to be more capable of offering good salaries in the future by making sure they're doing things well.
Well, and the point is that you know that this summer Lazio is not forced to sell players because the balance is still good. While on the other side, you know that Milan and Roma will probably have to sell players. So, you know, there's good and bad things. Obviously, it depends even how the UEFA will interact with the situation of the other clubs. That's a question mark on Milan, etc. But yeah, I mean it's positive to see Lazio healthy, and at the same time you have to remember that Lazio is the only club who have won last year after Juventus in Serie A. So
yep, yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's not, yeah, it's good to not be a selling club, to that extent, which a lot of people actually aim that criticism at Lazio, and I just think it's really kind of off the mark. That when De Vrij left this summer, people, I saw some people on Twitter saying, "Oh, that's classic Lazio. They missed in the Champions League. Now their whole squad's gonna be torn apart." No, it's not. I mean, De Vrij, yeah, he's left the club, but he was at the club for 4 years and had some of his best years then without leaving. And Felipe Anderson the same. The club resisted big offers and big interest in him before selling him for a really good price. So I don't think it is a selling club, and I think that does help to convince players when they're signing that they are actually signing up for a project that is in place and in order, and that Inzaghi's obviously at the heart of. So it does feel like, it's a big difference at this stage of Latito's era, that there's financial stability, yes, but there's also a kind of idea of where the club's going, and there's that kind of stability within the squad as well.
yes, I agree. I think that we passed that stage where there were just an idea, a plan to get to a certain level. Now Lazio is there. I think they need to make the final jump, reaching the Champions League and being consistent at the top of the Serie A. Hopefully this will be the right season. But
yeah, and that was the extra kind of heartbreak, I think, about missing out so badly last season on the Champions League, because it made sense, in the story, in the progression of this team, that step, it was the right time to take that next step into the Champions League and then consolidate in those positions. And it was a bit gutting to miss out, and I think we kind of already, some of us expected to be there. So to be honest, the fact that the club's consolidated over the summer in the way it did and managed to keep hold of the players and keep hold of the squad does go to show that against even that kind of pressure, it's still not broken everything apart.
yeah, I think the plan is still ongoing. So we're gonna see what happened this season. Ramiel Gendi is asking, Wallace surely won't start Sunday against Parma, right?
I really hope not. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'd like to see Luis Felipe on the right and Radu on the left. and obviously Acerbi in the middle. And I would like to reiterate that this Parma team are on a really good run. Ever since they beat Inter, they've been doing really well, and I don't think it's going to be an easy game again by any means. So the best, strongest team possible needs to be out there.
Yeah, I think Ramos proved to be very good, and I Radu again is it's a starting player. I mean, the team start from Radu and Acerbi and then goes on. So, and as you were saying, it's a very important match. So I hope Inzaghi opt to play with Ramos, Acerbi, and Radu. Arvid is asking, any opinion on Vittorio Paragini rumors? And maybe signing a player like Lazzari would make it possible to send away Cataldi.
Well, yeah, there's only a certain amount of space in the squad, so signing Lazzari probably would be Cataldi. That's not a bad point. But I mean, also, Basta needs to go as well, although his place in the squad's already being taken by Lukaku. Paragini, I've not really heard anything about that, to be honest. I've not really read much linking the player to Lazio. I'd be surprised. I mean, he's by all means a talented young player, but he's not. As far as I know, he's not playing week in, week out for Torino, and doesn't play in a position that we really need covered, as far as I know. But I'm, as you can probably guess, not exactly brilliantly informed on the guy. I've not seen an awful lot of him, so couldn't say really.
Yeah, there have been some rumors this week about Lazio targeting this player for January. To be honest, a lot of players have been linked to Lazio, and these have turned to be rubbish. So I'm not sure there's really an interest in there. And you have to see, is it really a player Lazio need? As Alistair was saying, we still need a replacement for Ciro Immobile, not a trequartista or a striker who play near Ciro. So I don't know if there's really an interest in there. Maybe for Salernitana could be. And talking about Lazzari, we said it often. He's a great player. It would have been amazing to having this summer move to Lazio. I don't think at this point Lazio has any chance to buy him. And there were rumors this summer that Cataldi was offered to Parma to Sassuolo, to get Acerbi, and maybe there can be an option to offer Cataldi to get Lazzari, but I still think Lazio would have to pay a lot to get him.
Yeah, and supposedly there's interest from, I think it was Milan now as well. So that's no surprise. I mean, I don't know how seriously to take these rumors. It's because we're now within a month and a half or two and a half months, of the market reopening. It feels like it's only just closed, but here we go again. And yeah, I think he'd be a brilliant player to have at Lazio. If there was any sort of contact over the summer, I do think they should do everything to reignite that, because I think he would really be a massive asset to the team.
Yes, I agree. And it's a shame Lazio wasn't able to finalize the deal and get him. Imagine of having him instead of Dusan Basta. But anyway, I don't know what Lazio are going to do this winter. But next match it's against Parma. As we said, it's very complicated. It's never easy when you have a lot of players that are playing all over the world to come back and prepare for the match. Luckily, a lot of Lazio players didn't play, but they still travel with the team. So it's never easy for a manager to prepare a match in this situation. But let's hope Inzaghi did it in the past, and let's hope he's able to do it again this week against Parma.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Huge game, and yeah, it's so important to get off to a good start after the international break, to get off to a good start in this new run of fixtures, and especially with Inter coming up after that. we don't really need to say how big that game's going to be. So
Yeah, and give continuity after the nice victory against Fiorentina. That was a really tough match, and Lazio played well and deserved to win. So that was really important. Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. 1 hour of podcast. I think people are tired of listening to us, but if you still didn't have enough of us, you can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. You can subscribe and support us, and obviously on Spreaker, on Spotify, on iTunes. You can subscribe to our podcast, so every time we do a new one, you get it automatically on your phone or wherever you tend to listen to podcasts. And if you like our podcast, please review it so we get a bigger audience. I think it's everything for now, Alistair. I don't know if you have something special to say to our followers.
I'd be amazed if any of them are still listening at this point.
Okay. Well, you never know. Maybe they're waiting for your last stats.
Nah. I take the week off for international breaks, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, we're coming back on Sunday to talk about the Parma-Lazio match. So enjoy the week, guys, and we're going to talk after Lazio-Parma. Thank you very much for listening to us.